You fried my Tesla, you text? Ops a psycho. That's what Karen screamed at 6:45 a.m. in steel and silk pajamas, barefoot on my lawn with her $90,000 zero cents electric car sitting dead behind her like a luxury corpse on wheels. Neighbors peeked out from windows. Someone spilled coffee. I just stood there holding my mug, watching suburban justice finally charge up. You won't believe how we got here, or how a three-stage power system turned the queen of HOA drama into a viral meltdown. They say divorce changes a man. Some people buy motorcycles, some hit the gym, others start dating yoga instructors half their age. I, Eli Granger, bought a lawnmower, a real fancy one too. Zero turn radius, Bluetooth speakers, cup holders, the works. After 12 years in a marriage that could be best described as cordial but catastrophically boring, I moved to Woodstone Lakes, a quiet little suburb where the mailboxes are regulation beige, and the biggest crime is someone leaving their trash bin out past Tuesday morning. As a former Army engineer turned electrical systems designer, all I wanted was peace, solitude, and maybe a dog that didn't shed. The house was a fixer-upper, but it had charm. A big oak tree in the front yard, a garage I could finally turn into my dream workshop, and most importantly, a yard wide enough to mow while pretending to escape metaphorical landmines from my past life. I kept to myself, waved politely to the neighbors, and settled into a routine that involved spreadsheets, bad coffee, and rewatching Band of Brothers way too often. Things were simple until she arrived. And by she, I don't mean a new flame. I mean something far more dangerous. A white-on-white Tesla Model X, gliding down the street like a spaceship of suburban entitlement. And behind the wheel, Karen. HOA royalty in the making. She moved in 3 houses down, but her presence echoed like a loud Bluetooth speaker at a funeral. Her first act as a resident, complaining about the non-conforming symmetry of the community flower beds. Her second, hosting a mimosa brunch for the HOA board featuring a wine list longer than the bylaws. I first spotted her through my blinds, unloading designer dog beds and a juicer the size of a jet engine. She wore sunglasses indoors, and her perfume reached my house before her Amazon Prime deliveries did. Still, I figured as long as she stayed on her side of the street, we'd coexist just fine. Then the power bill came. Now, I'm no stranger to kilowatt hours. I've designed backup grid systems for hospitals and data centers. I monitor my usage like a hawk. My bill averaged $120.00 a month, steady, predictable, like my ex-wife's meatloaf. But suddenly, $417.86. I thought maybe I left the water heater on or that my coffee maker had declared war on the grid. I did a full diagnostic, checked every outlet, appliance, even crawled into the attic with a thermal gun like some kind of utility ninja. Nothing added up, and yet the bill stared back at me like a punch in the wallet. Still, I wasn't ready to jump to conclusions. Maybe it was a fluke. Maybe my electric company hired a drunk intern. That was until I noticed something odd. The garden plug near the side fence had been moved ever so slightly. The cord reel I usually kept tightly wound was stretched a few inches further than usual. At first, I chalked it up to memory or maybe a squirrel with ambitious DIY goals, but something didn't sit right. Then came the second bill, $438.62. That's when I started watching the cameras. And that's when I saw her. Not just Karen, but a late night, silk robe wearing, flashlight carrying Karen sneaking along the fence line at 2 a.m. with a 50-foot extension cord. You think I'm exaggerating? Try watching someone treat your outdoor outlet like a private Tesla charging station while humming to herself and sipping sparkling water. That night, I didn't sleep. Not out of anger, not even from the injustice. It was the realization that I was in a war I hadn't signed up for, and I was facing an enemy who wore yoga pants and weaponized HOA bylaws like a Cold War diplomat. About a week after her grand Tesla's arrival, I figured it was time to play the good neighbor. I'm not one for big gestures, but my mom always said, first impressions matter, even if there was someone who thinks they're too good to breathe your air. So I baked banana bread, tossed in a six-pack of craft beer from the local brewery, and walked over with my welcome to Woodstone basket like some suburban Santa Claus. Karen opened the door in a pastel pink cashmere sweater, mid-August, mind you, and yoga pants so pristine they probably had their own dry cleaning subscription. Her smile was polite, like the kind you give someone who just stepped on your lawn. Ooh, how quaint, she said, eyeing the basket like I'd brought over a Tupperware of measles. You didn't have to go through all that trouble. She took it anyway. Inside her house looked like a crate and barrel catalog had exploded. Marble countertops, gold fixtures, a chandelier that could blind pilots. She gave me the grand tour, narrating each item with a tone that made me wonder if she was selling me timeshares. That's Italian quartz, back ordered for 6 months. And over here is our eco-friendly water feature imported from Iceland. I nodded, pretending to care, while quietly calculating the monthly electric drain of her in-floor heating and motorized blinds. When I mentioned I was an electrical engineer, her interest dropped faster than a signal in a tunnel. Oh, that's practical, she said, already guiding me toward the door. Within 2 weeks, Karen had infiltrated the HOA like a well-dressed virus. She started hosting community evenings filled with charcuterie boards that looked like edible Pinterest boards and wine that cost more than my microwave. Word got around that she had gotten herself appointed vice president of the HOA after Dorothy, our longtime sweetest pie, former VP, stepped down mysteriously. Rumor had it that Karen had accidentally discovered a certain sealed DUI record involving Dorothy's son. Woodstone Lakes, it turns out, had more political maneuvering than a midterm election. Meanwhile, I was still trying to solve the riddle of the midnight electricity drain. Then one night, my motion-activated camera pinged me at 2:07 a.m. I groggily checked my phone, and there she was, carrying tiptoeing across my side yard in silk pajamas and fluffy slippers, dragging a 50-foot extension cord like she was on a secret mission. She plugged it into my outdoor outlet, the one I use for trimming hedges and occasionally powering my inflatable Santa at Christmas. The cord snaked under the shrubs, coincidentally recommended by the HOA Landscaping Committee Karen now chaired, leading straight into her side driveway into her Tesla. I didn't know whether to be mad or impressed. Who casually steals electricity from a neighbor and hides it behind aesthetic shrubs? The next morning, I installed a lockbox over the outlet. Nothing fancy, just a weatherproof cover with a combination dial. Problem solved, I thought, until a few days later when I got a formal HOA violation letter for unauthorized aesthetic obstruction on a shared-facing fixture. Translation, Karen tattled. Due to the visible nature of the lockbox, it disrupts community harmony and must be removed immediately. You've got to love a system where the victim gets fined while the thief hosts wine tastings. Do you ever feel like you're in a sitcom where the villain controls the writer's room? Because that's exactly how it felt. And the laugh track, that was just my electric meter spinning like a roulette wheel every time Karen decided she deserved free fuel. The next morning, fueled by 3 cups of coffee and a sense of righteous fury, I marched over to Karen's palace of delusion with my phone in hand. I didn't bother with small talk. We need to talk about using my electricity to charge your Tesla, I said, thumbs already hovering over the play button. Karen opened the door in her usual luxury leisure wear ensemble. Designer tennis skirt, oversized visor, and that signature smirk that made you feel like a background extra in your own life. I have no idea what you're talking about, he laughed. She laughed like I'd just accused her of stealing a slice of my pizza, not hundreds of dollars in power. Hit play. The video was crystal clear, HD night vision footage of her sneaking across my yard, plugging in the cord, adjusting it just so, then jogging back like she just dropped off classified documents. Karen didn't blink. That could be anyone, she said, staring directly at Felicitas herself. Besides, maybe your electrical system's just outdated. It's really not my fault if your setup can't handle basic load balancing. Then she added, with a sugary smile laced in arsenic, oh, and speaking of neighborhood standards, I notice your hedges are 2 inches over regulation height. That's when I knew I wasn't dealing with just any entitled neighbor. I was dealing with the final boss of HOA warfare. So I did the unthinkable. I went to a neighborhood HOA meeting held at the community clubhouse. It was everything I imagined. Metal folding chairs, a malfunctioning Keurig, and people who take minutes more seriously than Congress. The room had the collective energy of a DMV lobby on a rainy Tuesday. I waited for the floor to open, then stood up, cleared my throat, and began. I'd like to raise a concern about unauthorized use of personal. Point of order. Karen's voice sliced through the air like a drone strike. Personal disputes are not appropriate for the general agenda. He should file a formal complaint with the board. The HOA president, Frank, an aging man who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else, possibly Jupiter, nodded. Yes, protocol must be followed, he mumbled. And just like that, I was shut down before I'd even finished the word electricity. I sat down, fuming, while Karen flashed me a smile that could curdle milk. Then came the kicker. Next item, Frank announced, flipping a page. Proposal for community charging stations. My ears perked up. Karen stood, glossy presentation folder in hand, and launched into full TED Talk mode. As a forward-thinking community, we must embrace sustainable energy. I propose the installation of 4 Level 2 EV chargers strategically placed for optimal accessibility. What she didn't say, one of those strategic placements, was 15 feet from her garage. And the funding? HOA fees. As in everyone pays. Karen gets premium charging convenience, we all get the bill. I sat there in stunned silence, staring at the proposal map where her house might as well have been labeled free power here. The neighbors around me nodded politely, unaware they were being gently mugged by someone in Lululemon leggings. And that's when it hit me. You think this story ends with a neighborly handshake and a slap on the wrist? You think Karen gets bored and moves on? No, this wasn't over. It wasn't even close, because now Karen wasn't just stealing from me. She was stealing from everyone. And I wasn't about to let that slide. The night after the HOA meeting, I sat in my garage staring at the same blueprint I used to design power grids for field hospitals overseas. Only this time, the mission wasn't in Baghdad, it was in Woodstone Lakes. And the enemy wasn't insurgents, it was a woman in athleisure with a $90,000 0-cents battery on wheels. I wasn't going to win this with complaints or arguments. Karen had cornered that market with wine and veiled threats, but I had something she didn't. Schematics, discipline, and a working knowledge of how much voltage it takes to make a rich person sweat. I started gathering data like it was wartime intelligence. First, I installed a commercial-grade energy monitor on my breaker panel. It logged every spike, every dip, every unexplainable power drain. I cross-referenced timestamps with my camera footage. Sure enough, the big power surges happened between 1:45 and 4 o'clock, i.e. AME on random nights. Karen wasn't just casually stealing, she had a routine. I looped in the Gomez couple, Brian, a high school science teacher with a disdain for HOA nonsense, and his wife Tanya, a no-nonsense night shift nurse who could spot a passive-aggressive tone from 100 yards. They'd been quietly furious about the rising HOA fees, especially when it meant cutting back on their son's after-school programs. You mean we're paying for her luxury Uber? Tanya said after I showed them the data. Oh no, not today, Satan. We started digging into the HOA expense reports, which, thanks to Marlene, the retired librarian/neighborhood historian, weren't hard to get. Marlene had records going back 15 years, neatly organized in plastic binders with handwritten sticky notes like Frank's suspicious wine bill and Dorothy's duck pond dispute. She was a one-woman Freedom of Information Act. Together, we mapped out a clear pattern. Since Karen's arrival, HOA energy expenditures had increased 18%, even before the charging stations were approved. There it was. Hard numbers, matching dates, matching usage. It wasn't just speculation now. It was theft with a receipt. While Tanya and Brian rallied quiet support from neighbors tired of surprise landscaping upgrades and mysterious noise ordinances, I buried myself in the HOA bylaws and municipal code books like a caffeinated lawyer prepping for a televised trial. That's when I found it. Section 14.3b, Electrical Safety and Unauthorized Usage Protections. It explicitly allowed for property owners to install personal use protective devices on external outlets, so long as the system complied with local safety codes and didn't obstruct visual uniformity. Translation, if I played it smart, I could legally install a countermeasure system. not a trap, a shield. So the plan was born. I sketched out the blueprint for what I later called the Smart Power Shield, or SPS for short, a layered defense system designed to detect unusual power draw, send warning signals, log the usage, and if the surge continued, shut off the circuit entirely with a controlled power fluctuation. It wouldn't fry anything, it wouldn't cause damage, but if someone ignored the warnings and tried to override it, that was on them. I ordered the parts that night: weatherproof housing, industrial grade sensors, programmable relay boards. I wasn't just building a box, I was building consequences. I soldered circuits and ran diagnostics until dawn, testing every line of code like I was back in combat prep. This wasn't about revenge, it was about protection. And maybe, just maybe, about teaching someone that stealing power from an engineer comes with more than just a bill. As I closed the lid on the final test unit and watched the diagnostic lights blink green, I couldn't help but smile. I couldn't beat Karen at HOA wine nights. I couldn't outcharm her yoga squad. But I had something else. I had resistors, logic boards, and a voltage meter that didn't bluff. And that's when I knew this war was about to get interesting. Installing the SPS was like setting up the world's most polite booby trap. The box looked innocent enough: a sleek, gray, weatherproof case mounted neatly next to my outdoor outlet with clean wiring, a discrete LED indicator, and a professionally laminated sign that read, "Protected by Smart Power Shield. Unauthorized usage will trigger system response. Warning, monitored and logged." I even used one of those fancy zip ties that look like you know what you're doing. Inside the box was the real magic: current sensors calibrated to detect abnormal draw patterns, a time-based trigger system, and a little circuit I designed to issue warning pulses in 3 escalating stages: soft beep and yellow flash, then louder beep and blinking red, and finally a voltage cutoff if the pattern persisted. It didn't fry anything, it didn't surge or zap, it just made life slightly inconvenient for people who didn't know what private property meant. Everything was up to code. I double-checked with county regulations, consulted with a buddy who works as a municipal inspector, and even printed out the relevant safety certifications in case Gregory from the HOA decided to play clipboard warrior again. And of course, I took photos of the setup with timestamps front, side, and zoomed in on the warning sign just to make sure my Tesla driving energy thief. I wanted to make sure my trap couldn't bite me back. That's the day after I installed it, I noticed Karen on her usual morning patrol. She walked along our shared property line like she was evaluating her kingdom, sipping her green smoothie and mentally drafting violation letters. She spotted the SPS unit, squinted at the sign, then rolled her eyes so hard I thought she'd sprained something. She didn't stop, didn't ask questions, just gave it that patented Karen scoff, equal parts annoyance and disbelief, then strutted off like I'd just installed a lawn gnome holding a protest sign. Part of me hoped the big warning text would scare her off. The other part knew better. 2 days later, I received another violation notice. This time it claimed the unauthorized signage on my outlaw violated HOA Aesthetics Policy Section 6.2. Visible signage must conform to community visual guidelines. I couldn't help but laugh. The sign was smaller than a no parking sticker, printed in neutral colors, and according to municipal code, required for safety labeling on protected electrical systems. I drafted my response with footnotes, citations, and enough legal jargon to make a law professor tear up with joy. I even attached a highlighter to the envelope for Gregory's convenience. But deep down, I was thrilled, because this wasn't just another slap on the wrist. This meant she'd noticed. And if Karen noticed, then Karen would challenge it. And if she challenged it, she'd have to engage with the system. And when she engaged with the system, well, let's just say she was about to get a hands-on lesson in overconfidence. They call me the quiet guy who lives behind the oak tree, the one who keeps to himself and doesn't show up to HOA potlucks, and that's mostly true. But what they don't know is that the quiet guy has a soldering iron, a home server rack, and more knowledge of kilowatt-hour trickery than most utility workers. I couldn't win this with charm or wine tastings, but I could win with science. I was about to teach Karen a lesson Harvard Law never covered. When you steal from an engineer, you're not just borrowing power. You're flipping a switch you don't understand. It was 1:03 a.m. when my security app pinged. Motion detected. I reached for my phone without thinking, half asleep but fully conditioned at this point, and there she was. Karen, in all her midnight glory, strutting down her driveway in silk pajamas and fuzzy slippers, dragging a fresh extension cord like a trophy snake. The new community charging stations had just been installed earlier that week, courtesy of a suspiciously fast HOA emergency vote, and conveniently, one of them was placed just feet from her backyard gate. Technically legal, strategically criminal. But apparently even that wasn't enough for her. She still wanted more speed, more voltage, more of my electricity. The footage showed her plugging her Tesla into the official charging port. Then, under the soft glow of her porch lights, snaking the other end of a hidden Y splitter under the shrubs, right into the outlet connected to my Satia's system. A dual feed. Sneaky, sure, but not smarter than the guy who designed battlefield-grade grid redundancies for mobile army units. She tapped her Tesla app. The charge ramped up. First 20 I-minutes, then 30, then the full greedy draw of 48 I-minutes. Peak load. She wanted it all. Fast, free, quiet. My system didn't do quite. Everyone kicked in, a soft yellow light on the SPS blinking like a tired firefly. Stage 2 followed in 15 seconds. Red flashing and a clear mechanical beep like a microwave warning someone their burrito's about to explode. And then she smiled, on camera, smiled like it was a dare. She reached down, tapped the Tesla screen again, and maxed it out. No delay, no ramp up, no mercy. The sensors registered the surge, Ferris stabilization failed, step 3 engaged, automatic voltage cutoff with micro-interrupt logging and full protective trigger. The SPS did its job perfectly. On screen, Karen's Tesla gave one last hum, then silence. The headlights flickered once and went dead. The onboard screen went black. She stared, tapped it again, still black, no response, just her standing there, blinking at the dashboard of a $90,000 0-cents electric luxury brick. Then came the sound, not from the car, but from her, a banshee screech of absolute fury, echoing across the cul-de-sac like an angry goose caught in a blender. She started pounding on the hood, yelling something about lawsuits, sabotage, and electrical terrorism, whatever that is. I watched it all live from my phone, sipping water and trying not to laugh out loud. A few porch lights flicked on down the street. Mr. Pennington peeked through his blinds. Someone's golden retriever started barking. Karen, still in silk pajamas, still barefoot, was now circling her dead Tesla like it had betrayed her personally, which, in a way, it had. By the time I stepped outside to check what the noise was, she was already halfway across our yards, finger pointed at me like she was casting a curse. "You did this, you pathetic little man. Your stupid science project destroyed my vehicle." I blinked. "I'm sorry, are you referring to the standard industrial safety system that gave you 3 warnings before cutting off an illegal power draw?" Her mouth, open and closed, like a fish trying to file a complaint. The neighbors were gathering now, pajamas, robes, coffee mugs. The whole block was watching. And Karen, still barefoot, Tesla dark and lifeless behind her, was quickly realizing this wasn't just a technical failure. It was a full-blown social meltdown. And I wasn't even done yet. Her $90,000 0-cents Tesla was now a very fashionable paperweight on wheels, and that was just the warm-up. By the next morning, my front door had become a stage for angry doorbell theatrics. Karen returned in full force, this time in business casual rage mode, armed with a thick manila folder and a husband who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. William Harrington, corporate attorney, serial golf retreat attendee, and man who measured his worth by the thread count of his shirts, stood behind her while she did the talking. "You've committed property damage," she hissed. "You'll be hearing from our attorney." William cleared his throat and accepted the folder I handed him. Complete documentation of the SPS, voltage logs, safety protocols, county compliance, and of course, 3 separate video clips of Karen ignoring warning signals like they were tax deadlines. He started flipping through the pages. His expression shifted from lawyerly disdain to something closer to, "Oh, dear God, what did she do now?" Later that afternoon, I submitted an official request for a special HOA meeting. As per bylaws, any member could call for one with evidence of financial misappropriation or safety risk. I had both. I printed everything, labeled it, and even got Martha's stamp of approval. That woman doesn't approve things lightly. She once blocked a $38.00 bird bath installation for violating visual harmony. If you get Martha, you get the old guard. And if you get the old guard, well, let's just say your HOA revolution starts feeling a lot more possible. The meeting was scheduled 3 days later, and people showed up like it was the Super Bowl of petty justice. Folding chairs filled up fast, and the mood in the room was thick with curiosity and caffeine. I brought my laptop, a small projector, and a backup USB drive because I'd watched enough tech presentations to know something always goes wrong. As Frank, the HOA president, nervously welcomed everyone and pretended this wasn't a coup in khakis, I was already queuing up the footage. I'd like to share evidence of unauthorized use of HOA resources, I said calmly as the lights dimmed. Then I hit play. The video played in dead silence. Karen sneaking out at night, plugging in, bypassing warnings, and finally watching her Tesla power down like it had just seen a ghost. Then came the charts. My SPS logs showed her power consumption at 75 kilowatt yards per night. Multiply that by 30 days into current utility rate, that's around $500, 0 cents a month, added directly to shared HOA dues. Faces in the room changed. Mrs. Landry from Unit 12 whispered, "That's why my bill went up." One of the Thompsons muttered, "We pulled our son from baseball because of those fees." Then someone in the back said, "She's been robbing us blind with a smile." Karen stood up, arms crossed, trying to reclaim the narrative. "This is a gross mischaracterization. These videos are intrusive and potentially illegal. I have rights." Her voice cracked slightly at the end. Before Frank could stumble into a half response, Martha stood up. And when Martha stands, people listen. "I move to initiate a vote," she declared, voice sharp as garden shears. "We demand restitution for the stolen power, removal of Karen Harrington from the HOA board effective immediately, and a full re-election of board members to restore trust in this institution." Frank looked like he wanted to melt into his chair. Someone seconded the motion, then a third, then half the room. Karen tried one last time, now visibly rattled. "You can't just vote me out like this." But Frank, sensing the tidal wave of homeowner fury, finally found his spine. "Actually, we can. It's in the bylaws." The vote wasn't close. Out of 38 households present, 35 voted yes. 1 abstained. 2, Karen and her friend from Unit 9 voted no. Karen's face turned a color somewhere between Merlot and volcanic ash. That night, the clubhouse didn't empty with quiet murmurs. It buzzed with laughter, backpats, and the kind of "can you believe that happened" energy you only get when justice goes viral on a neighborhood scale. And for the first time since this all started, I didn't feel like the quiet guy in the shadows. I felt like a man who built a circuit and accidentally lit a revolution. Karen didn't say goodbye. No yard sale, no farewell brunch, not even a passive-aggressive newsletter signed with warmest regards. One day she was here, the next her Tesla was gone, flatbedded to the nearest service center with a dead battery and a damage report that started with catastrophic surge event. The official repair estimate, $22,000, 0 cents. And since her charging behavior had violated every user guideline in the Tesla owner's manual, her warranty was void. Corporate Karen had finally met technical karma. As for the neighborhood vote, the results stood. Karen was removed from the board, required to reimburse $6,800, 0 cents in misappropriated electrical costs, and given 30 days to comply or face legal action from the HOA. She once ruled with pastel-colored menace. She and William listed the house within the week. The asking price was suspiciously low. Rumors swirled that they were moving to somewhere more exclusive, which I took to mean somewhere with fewer engineers and more gullible board members. Nobody offered to help them pack. No casserole, no wave goodbye. The only person who acknowledged their departure was Martha, who sat across the street in a lawn chair, sipping tea and occasionally lifting her mug whenever Karen looked over. Honestly, it felt poetic. With Karen gone and the HOA leadership turned over, things changed fast. The new board, led by Brian Gomez, implemented a complete policy review. Budget transparency became mandatory. Board meetings were recorded and posted online. And Perhaps most importantly, the charging station policy was rewritten. From now on, all EV chargers in the community would require individual metering. You use it, you pay for it. Simple as that. I helped design the new infrastructure. Nothing fancy, just clean, secure, and honest. The new chargers even had usage apps so no one could accidentally siphon juice from the community budget again. They asked me to run for the HOA board. Multiple times, actually. I politely declined every time. Meetings, power struggles, and debates over shrub height weren't really my thing. I told them I'd be happy to serve as a technical advisor, just not someone who had to vote on paint swatches. They agreed. And I now hold the unofficial title of Energy and Security Consultant, which basically means I get called when someone wants to install a bird feeder and make sure it doesn't violate code. I can live with that. Something else happened too. The neighborhood changed. People started talking more, sharing tools, swapping recipes, even helping the Thompsons build a batting cage in their backyard for their son, who, by the way, went back to playing baseball and hit his first home run a month later. Sarah, Tanya, and a few others started a community garden in the old drainage lot. Brian set up a mini lending library in a recycled newspaper box. Even Gregory, the former clipboard enforcer, returned, quietly, humbly, offering to help fix the benches near the park. He apologized for the past and brought donuts. We accepted both. The house next to mine eventually sold to a young couple, pediatrician and a software engineer. They installed a small water fountain in the front yard and asked me, very politely, if it exceeded any HOA guidelines. It did. But the new board approved it anyway. Turns out, when people treat each other like neighbors instead of walking violations, a lot more becomes possible. Every now and then, I still look at the spot where Karen used to park her Tesla. It's quiet now. Just a freshly painted curb, a smart meter humming softly in the sun, and a neatly labeled charger that actually tracks who uses it. Funny thing is, Karen could have had all of this. All she had to do was play fair. But some people would rather cheat the system than ask how it works. Luckily for us, that system now has new wiring, and this time the current flows toward the people. So what do we learn, folks? First, don't steal electricity from your neighbor, especially if that neighbor used to wire military bases and owns a soldering iron for fun. Second, power, literal or political, only works when it's grounded in respect. Karen tried to game the system and ended up bricking a Tesla, losing an HOA seat, and moving out with nothing but a bill and a bruised ego. Play stupid games, win stupid prizes. In life, whether it's a neighborhood or a company, transparency matters. And sometimes the quiet guy with the toolbox is the real MVP. If you enjoyed this story, hit that like button, drop a comment with your craziest HOA experience, and don't forget to subscribe for more real-life revenge with a spark. Thanks for watching, and remember, always respect the nerds. They might just be the ones wiring your karma.